Scott Newgent has become a prominent voice against the medical transition of children. Scott went through the medical transition process 8 years ago and is very open about the complications and the deeply felt regret held because of those surgeries. We get into all of it: Scott's transition, the danger these procedures pose, not just to minors, but also to adults, and pronouns. Scott presents as a man, but is a woman. So what does this mean when it comes to pronouns and identity and things like that? There are many things on which Scott and I disagree. Anyone who has listened to Relatable, who knows me, will be able to detect where in Scott's answers I don't necessarily align. But I wanted you to hear her story, her perspective. You already know mine. It's a very fascinating conversation that I know that you're going to be educated by, but also hopefully emboldened by too. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Good Ranchers. Go to goodranchers.com. Use code Allie at checkout. That's goodranchers.com, code Allie. Scott, thanks so much for taking the time to join us. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Allie.
Yeah, so a lot of people know your name from Matt Walsh's documentary, although you've been talking about your transition for longer than that. What's it been like, though, since the documentary came out for you?
Well, it's been nuts, quite frankly. Thousands of emails and text messages from parents all over the world that are dealing, with medicalization of children, and thankful that I spoke up and Matt speaking up and other people are speaking up. It's been a roller coaster, quite frankly. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you expect the reaction that you got? Because on the documentary, just for people who don't know, you talk about the medical complications that you've had to endure because of your transition. Were you surprised at just the outpouring of support and questions and stuff that you've received?
Yes. I've been doing this for almost 5 years now. It helped with the first bill in South Dakota, so I've been doing this for quite a long time. And I was asked to be in a lot of different documentaries. And I say no to a lot of things. I don't think people realize that there's a lot of people that want all this attention. I was never one. I felt like it was a duty. I got really sick and kind of made a promise with God that if I was here for my kids, I would do this. And so this is a very core, it's very personal to me. It's about my kids, basically.
Right.
So when I was approached about what is a woman, I didn't know who Matt was. I don't look into stuff. I just let my gut tell me what to say yes to and what to say no to. And that was a firm yes for me. And I didn't know. As soon as it came out, everybody's like, oh, Matt Walsh is famous. I'm like, what, the Jewish guy with a huge beard?
So you didn't know.
I had no clue.
You didn't know. And just FYI, Matt is Catholic. So just kind of making a joke there. Okay, so a lot of people, because of that and because of just probably following you since then or maybe even before that, they know your story, but a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
So just take us back. Tell us who you are and why you do what you do.
Well, at 42, I started the medicalization process. And I was kind of in a vulnerable place in my life. I was married to a woman who was a Catholic and very, very religious and never wanted to be, and who wants to be gay, by the way, but never really accepted it and always kind of soothed herself with the idea that, she's not a lesbian. It's just me. I was born in the wrong body and I was a man. And she had said that to me for years, like joking, like, you lock the doors just like, my ex-husband or something, men do that. And it was a joke, right?
Your partner would say this to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was a joke, all the way around. It wasn't anything that was, she wasn't being horrible about it. She's not a horrible person, but it was a way to kind of soothe herself, right? And I got to a pretty vulnerable place in our relationship where, she was going to have to tell her family about me, all that kind of stuff. And we were watching, I think, what is it, like Caitlyn Jenner had a reality show, Jazz Jennings.
Oh.
And we were watching it, on a couch, just kind of like this. And I just looked at her and went, God, maybe I was born in the wrong body. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, well, I don't know. Let's go see a therapist. And the next week we were in front of a trans woman therapist who, said, how long have you been dressing like a man? Now, if you knew me before I medically transitioned, you would think that was a joke. I used to do hair and makeup in my early 20s. It's how I got into business sales. But I was at a vulnerable place, right? And so that
and why were you at a vulnerable place?
I was at a vulnerable place because of the relationship that I was in. And her family didn't know about me. We had gotten together before and then broke up. I left her because I didn't think that she would be able to be in a gay relationship, and I didn't want to kind of pull her apart. And so then she came back and said, "I'm okay with it. I'm going to tell everybody." And it was like right at that vulnerable place, and you know, her son was pregnant with his wife for the first time, and I remember she was on the phone with him and got off the phone and was like, "God, I wonder if I'm going to be able to, you know, see my grandkids." So it was just a very, very vulnerable place. You know,
but you had been out as a lesbian for a while.
Absolutely, yeah.
And for her, this was kind of a secret thing. It was a secret thing. You were afraid you were going to lose this relationship. True.
Yeah, I was with a woman who's still my best friend that we had 3 children with, and that, you know, didn't work out, and we were separated, and so this was my second wife, kind of thing. So it was a very vulnerable place. And, you know, that trans woman that said that, I don't think people realize how vulnerable kids are. You know, at 42, I was a business sales executive. I've never been kind of a meek person. But I remember in that therapy room, again, I was on a couch like this, and I remember she said that, and I was looked down, and then I looked up, and I, you know, looked at my wife, and then I looked at the therapist, and I was like, I guess all my life, I guess. You know, and I remember for 2 weeks after that, it was a really, really hard place to be at. Like I was a joke. Like for my entire life, I'd walk by somebody and they'd go, "Yeah, that's Kelly. I think that's a dude. She doesn't know it." And so after that initial period, after a couple of weeks, I started to think, wow, what would my life have been like if I was born male? And I thought to myself, well, you know, I started school early at 4 in kindergarten. The teacher started reading a book, you know, and all the parents were there, you know, because it was the first day. And I, you know, walked up, grabbed the book and said, "Your inflections are wrong." And I proceeded to read it. So I've always been a very strong personality. You know, our father, my sister's here, was a professional athlete, you know, played baseball and then, you know, rode motorcycles, just kind of like the Marlboro Man kind of a thing. And, you know, for me, I was also an athlete. So overly aggressive, a good athlete, very strong, dominant personality, same-sex attracted, that type of stuff. And so it made it so that I was on the outs as a child. And so when basically I had this revelation that I was born in the wrong body, I kind of interjected the different gender. And I went, God, my life would have been gone from awkward to, you know, I mean, the male that every man and woman would want, you know, the athlete, and everything that was hard would have turned easy. And so it was at that point I couldn't let go of that. And that's what's happening to these kids.
So when you sat in front of the therapist, which you said was a trans woman, and I always kind of have to translate that. People ask me, wait, what is trans woman? What does trans man mean? That is a male who is presenting as a male. Woman. Yes. So said to you, how long have you been dressing like a man? You never thought about yourself dressing like a man. And I
wasn't, by the way.
Right. And so did you ever have, before that, I know you said you were same-sex attracted, but did you ever have gender confusion at any point that you can remember? Like, did it ever come to your mind before, maybe I am supposed to just be a man?
Well, gender confusion is kind of it's something I wouldn't say, because most people that medically transition understand what gender is. It's a want. It's a desire. It's cosmetic surgery. So to kind of reframe that for you. So had I ever wanted to be a boy as a child? You bet. You know, I remember talking about kindergarten again. You know, right around that time when I turned 5, my uncle's like, "What do you want for Christmas?" I was like, "Well, Uncle Kenny, I would like to be a boy." And he goes, "Well, you can't be that. Do you want a briefcase? You always said you don't like carrying a bag. Do you want a briefcase?" Yeah. So I got to, you know, that kind of a thing. So yes, there was a desire. There was always a kind of a realignment with me, like, don't be that aggressive and don't do this and don't do that. And so it was just natural for me to go, God, I just wish I was a boy. But reality's reality, right?
So when a therapist said that to you, did something kind of click, or like, What was that feeling initially? Did it feel like, wow, he just told me something that I've always wondered, is that true about me? Or were you a little offended by it?
Embarrassed.
Mm,
Embarrassed. I felt stupid.
mm. Like everyone knew something that you didn't know about
Yeah.
yourself.
And then after that initially wore off and I kind of replaced my life as a male, it all made sense. Instead of, and I wasn't in a place to basically compartmentalize and kind of step back in that and say, wait a second, maybe I'm not wrong. Maybe human beings, males and females, come all different ways. There's not one way for a woman to be a woman, and there's not one way for a man to be a man. So maybe these gender stereotypes, which are legitimate, I think, because most females kind of fit in this and most males fit in that. But what about the 30% that don't? Maybe we need to broaden our horizons on what men and women are and the differences, and not try to stereotype people so much.
Okay, it is time again to tell you guys about my favorite skincare company, and that is Adele Natural Cosmetics. So I switched to them a couple years ago after really not paying attention very much at all to what I was putting on my skin. I think I was just using like drugstore facial cleanser and moisturizer. And then I decided, okay, I'm getting up there. I really need to start caring about the moisture level of my skin, the texture of my skin. And so I switched to Adele Natural Cosmetics because they're totally toxin free. They don't have any parabens. They don't have any toxic ingredients, and they don't have any fake fragrances. And I've seen a huge difference in just the smoothness and the moisture and the texture of my skin since switching to them. I love that they're a pro-life Christian company. They love the Lord, and it's just a joy to support them. And you guys love them too. If you haven't checked them out yet, go to AdeleNaturalCosmetics.com. Use code Allie at checkout. You'll get 25% off your first order. AdeleNaturalCosmetics.com, code Allie. AdeleNaturalCosmetics.com, code Allie. When I was growing up, I didn't want to wear dresses. I was very embarrassed by the idea of
you're a trans
frills
man.
in bows. Yeah.
Did you not know that?
I didn't know. Thanks for the revelation.
Okay, you're welcome.
I only wanted to wear jeans and a t-shirt. I liked like bugs and snakes and things like that.
You're definitely a boy.
Yeah. And so, but I'm thankful. I'm thankful that that was never a question, and that no one, like my parents kind of just let me do that and be that. And of course, my mom still wanted me to wear dresses. I was the only girl. I had two older brothers, but I do really worry about the young people today who, when they venture outside of the stereotype at all, like you were just talking about, well, their identity is questioned. Who they are is questioned. And that's like a very scary and difficult place to be, especially for a child.
Yep.
Yeah.
So these children that are medically transitioned, people in general that are medically transitioning, whether or not people are offended by reality or not, reality is reality, right? So children who believe that they're born in the wrong body have what's called comorbidities. Some people don't like that because of the same sex. So we'll call them commonalities. And those commonalities are not just every once in a while. They're in everybody that medically transitions. And those commonalities are same-sex attracted. So we have 42% of these boys would grow up to be, homosexual males or same-sex attracted, not giving them, the right to decide what they want to do with that. That's just, we're going to transition you for that. Same-sex attracted, of course, autism. We are usually mentally gifted, mentally ill, or we have some kind of trauma. So all of the things that the evangelicals talked about with homosexuality that seem to it not true. I mean, it doesn't matter how much you don't want to be same-sex attracted. It's not going to go away with talk therapy. You can decide to do something. But all of those talk tracks and all of that carnage and pain that was created from that, we have a society that thinks that transgenderism and homosexuality are the same thing. And what I like to say is flip that. And what the evangelicals said about homosexuality is absolutely, unequivocally 100% true about transgenderism. And that's the truth.
Yeah, you touched on trauma. That's something, I've talked to several detransitioners, and that is, I don't think I've talked to a single female detransitioner who was not sexually harassed or sexually assaulted.
Absolutely.
And you've talked openly about that, about
yeah.
your sexual assault when you were a teen, right?
Yep.
And so tell us, like, do you think that that affected your thoughts about sexuality and gender and then your eventual transition?
Well, sure, and that's a slippery slope, right, Allie? Because then we're correlating, same-sex attraction to trauma. And then all of a sudden, we've got to divide and prosper, right? We've got a society that, you have to feel this way or that way. And the truth is somewhere in the middle on that. So to answer your question about that, I think that that's a huge thing. I think that there's a lot of people that do have trauma that kind of, try to heal themselves with same-sex attraction or being different, that kind of stuff. Not all. And those people that do that need to get therapy and, be who they are, which is straight. Now, there are some people that are same-sex attracted, and I believe that they're born that way. So that's a gray area, right? So as society, we need to stop doing that. We need to stop doing the, divide and prosper, they just crossed the left, that kind of stuff. That's a good business model, thinking that way, black and white. But that black and white thinking has made our society have a huge blind spot where we're butchering, and I mean this, literally, butchering an entire generation of children, mind, body, and soul, because of that blind spot. With a process, there's no study that says it's beneficial for these kids. There's 7 studies that came out and said they were beneficial, all been retracted or modified with not enough time, not enough participants. But those are the pamphlets that are being handed to these parents, that medical transition is a miracle cure, when there's only one long-term study that was ever done in Sweden from 1973 to 2003, and they found that you're more suicidal after. But 7 to 10 years, that's a long time, because medical process is a long journey, right? Well, try to find that online. Try to find anything online. And all you're going to find is, unicorn farts and glitter bombs from the LGBTQ. And there's a reason for that. So to answer your question about trauma and people that correlate that, absolutely.
Well, trauma and transition specifically, maybe I made a mistake saying sexuality, because I really just mean, it seems like a lot of these girls that I've talked to, they will even say, I was running away from my body and I didn't like being objectified. And I thought that if I didn't have breasts anymore, then maybe I would be less vulnerable.
Absolutely.
Did that play into your thinking at all?
No, but I understand how it happens with girls.
Yeah.
Now, do I think trauma might have had something to do with it? Probably. Am I aware of it? No. These girls, it's maybe fresh on their mind. So I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But these children that you talk about, these detransitioners, it's a really, really, really red button for me. When I was in What Is a Woman, I hadn't been on testosterone for 17 months.
Yeah.
Didn't take testosterone for over 2 years. That is detrans, what you saw there. And so we're taking these girls at 11 who have, let's say, autism. So they don't fit in. They're socially awkward. They don't know how to interchange with people. And then girls, we expect them to have this kind of like flirtatious, thing. They don't know how to do that. They don't fit in at all. And then we have medical professionals and people telling them that they're born in the wrong body. They get to celebrate that. And then they get to be 18 or 19 years old and realize, oh my God, I've got bone issues. I've got heart issues. I can't have kids. I'm actually straight, but now I look like a man. So I'm gonna have to be in a gay relationship for the rest of my life. And now I'm going to kill myself. And then they get on Twitter and they have evangelicals and conservatives and, feminists lifting them up. As if you detrans, you're going to feel better. And then they go on the circuit and they get lifted and then they get dropped. Because they go to the grocery store and get served for the rest of their life. So the humanity of what's happening to these kids all the way around, it's not the right, it's not the left. It's human beings. It's society that's letting these girls down. We're letting the detransitioners down too.
And tell me about, let's go back to your story. And I know you shared about this on What Is a Woman, but talk about your medical transition. So after that, you said for a couple weeks there after the therapist, you felt like, oh my gosh, has everyone known this thing about me that
Mortified.
I didn't know?
Yeah.
You said that you were embarrassed. And so was it a pretty quick line from there that you said, okay, I am going to try to present as a man?
This is so funny because people don't don't believe me, but it's absolutely the truth. It was, wow, I wonder if I was born in the wrong body. Next week, therapist. Next week, hormones.
Wow.
Next week, appointment for the plastic surgeon for the top surgery.
Yeah.
4 weeks later, I had my first surgery.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Where they cut my bladder. Yeah, it's
They
been a
nicked your
nightmare.
bladder.
Mhm.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
So
Because they were going to do a hysterectomy and a top surgery, and they nicked my bladder. On top of, they had me on a medication called Contrave, which is an opioid inhibitor, which means that you could give me tons of pain medication. I won't feel it. It's like water. So I had my first 3 surgeries, basically like medieval times, waking up with a Tylenol. Yeah, it post-traumatic stress. I always thought it was not real. It's real.
Yeah. Wow. So this happened all within a month. Like, what is your partner thinking? What are your different family members, your siblings? What are they thinking?
You know, I can't speak for my sister or my family, but I think a lot of them saw me struggle so much with being a lesbian. I didn't want to be. And we have this kind of celebrating society right now within the LGBTQ, which is wrong. There's nothing to celebrate with being homosexual. It's hard. It's hard to do, and we need to accept people better with that. But what we don't need to do is promote it. Or it's not a recruiting agency, right? So my family had seen me suffer with that, and they wanted to believe just like I did. And they also just wanted to support me. So I got some pushback from my sister a little bit, but after she knew I wasn't going to give in, she was like, all right, let's rock it, little bro. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then tell me, like, what your life has been like since then. You said that was how many years ago that you started the medical transition?
42. So 8 years.
Okay.
So in 8 years, I've had 7 surgeries. I've had a pulmonary embolism, a stress-induced heart attack. I have had a reoccurring infection that, I mean, to the end, I had an IV sick tube or PIC tube or whatever in my heart because I had to work, finding out that, hey, you know what? Medical transition is experimental. Nobody in my state that I trust can do this than the person that hurt me. So I have to get insurance to fix this. So I would go to work for 5 days and then go in the hospital in the ER, and then I would check out, and then after I would check out, the doctor finally said to me, we're just going to have to put this in your arm because you're going to check out tomorrow, aren't you? I said, yeah, I got to go to work. So much stuff. I have a handicapped arm for life. I had a ligament protruding through it. I've had sepsis. I've lost my house, my car, my home.
To pay for all of the...
Yeah, everything. I've lost absolutely everything. And here I am on this circuit. And what I don't think people realize is, I wasn't paid for what is a woman. I'm not paid a dime. I'm doing this because at the end of this, I realized that I was dying. And I woke up on the bathroom floor in my own urine and blood. And I realized I was dying, and I celebrated that. I was accepting that until I thought of my kids. And so nobody knew what was wrong with me. And I made a promise with God at that moment that if I could figure out what was wrong with me, if they could fix me, if I could be here for my children, I would do what I'm doing. And so it's the reason why people listen to me is because I'm sincere. I have no other agenda. I don't sign on with politicians to make $10,000 speeches here or there. I do this in a basement, in a moldy basement. Seriously, I've got $200 to my name. And I'm traveling back and forth and paying for taxis. I'm doing that for my kids. So all people see is a mom.
Okay, y'all, Brave Books. If you have not gotten your subscription from Brave Books yet, now is the time. They send you a picture book every month that explains the values that you and I have to our children in a way that they can understand. So whether it's the reality of the gender binary, whether it's the sanctity of life, even things like the Second Amendment, they break these issues down in a way that's entertaining, in a way that is child friendly. I think it's perfect for kids ages like kindergarten through 4th grade. The illustrations are really beautiful. And these ideas, these positive ideas, these biblical ideas can stick in their mind in a way that is really creative and fun. And a lot of you are asking me all the time, like, how do we teach these lessons to our kids in a way that they understand? We're going to the library and we're seeing pride displays, all kinds of children books that are just pushing this destructive, progressive propaganda. Well, this is a way to combat those destructive ideas. Give them books that are actually edifying. So if you go to bravebooks.com, you can use code Allie. You'll get a free book and then 20% off your subscription where you get that book every month. So you'll get a free book and 20% off your subscription if you go to bravebooks.com, code Allie. That's bravebooks.com, code Allie. Tell us a little bit more, because so many people they don't know. They don't know what all of this entails. So you said within weeks you had the hormones and you had the surgery. Was there any moment in there that you said, like maybe after you started hormones, that you said, whoa, hang on a second.
Yeah.
What am
Absolutely.
I doing?
Absolutely. The affirmation model is very, very dangerous. Yeah, I remember the first surgery I had where they cut my bladder. I remember just thinking,
So that was the first. That was before top surgery?
yeah, that was my first surgery. I remember looking at my wife just saying, I just wish she would just say it's okay. I love you just the way you are and we'll get through this. And I remember them calling me sir, like the whole idea of sir looks so female. And it was like, I remember they gave me the medication. I was thinking to myself, that's wrong. That's wrong. So yeah, there was a whole bunch of that, right? But you can't challenge that if society in general just kind of acquiesce to everything, because nobody wants to hurt anybody's feelings.
Yeah.
Because the LGBTQ plus has turned into a recruiting perverted agency. I mean, and let's talk about, can we talk about that for a minute?
Sure.
Of the why? Allie, what I didn't realize is that activism is a business. I had no clue. Seriously, I had no clue. I had no clue that, if you have 20,000 followers on Twitter, and if you keep screaming the way I do, you'll get kicked off and then you won't get monetized and make money. So I didn't modify my words or anything, or I didn't do anything that you were supposed to do to get to be where I'm at. I did what was right because it was the right thing to do. But I've learned that activism is a business, right? So in 2015, what happened within the gay and lesbian community? We got all of those rights that every human being deserves, which I call righteous rights. Doesn't matter how somebody feels about homosexuality. Totally okay with me on that. But every human being deserves to love another adult and be respected. You've been with a partner for 30 years. They're dying in the hospital. Nobody should be able to kick you out. You should be able to work where you want to work without being fired because of your sexuality. And you should live where you want to live without being, work, live, love, right? And we won those rights in 2015. And we won those rights by helping society understand that we weren't a recruiting agency. Those were all the three things that we wanted. And so in 2015, we won those worldwide, right? Well, what happens to activists? What happens to activism? Well, organizations like the LGBTQ or Stonewall in 2015 in the UK filed bankruptcy in 2015 because there's nothing else to fight for. There was no more donations coming in. In 2016, they had a 32% year-over-year growth. Now, you're in this business. That's significant for any type of organization that does donations, that gets government funding. And the only thing that they did was sign on with Mermaids. Now, Mermaids is an organization that is the sole focus of medicalizing children. So the new activist business model of the LGBTQ was to push children to medically transition. And in the process, all the decent gays and lesbians, regardless of how you feel, went home to raise our kids. And so what kind of started to infiltrate into the LGBTQ? Perverts, money mongers, medically transitioning children. So we have this huge organization. We have a huge blind spot in our society where people think that the LGBTQ is a good organization. All, artists and singers and actors, they all want to get on that. Everybody wants to be on that train. And they are the worst organization in the world right now. And everybody is afraid to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And people won't understand that until people like me double quoted on the rainbow. Lesbian, trans man. I'm over 50, so maybe 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
I am the rainbow. Until we stand up and start to say what is going on. The truth is, not a lot of us know what's going on that are decent. The majority of gays and lesbians are decent. But I want these people to stand up. They need to know what's going on.
So do you think that you felt, even though obviously you weren't a child, you were an adult, but you said you started this process and you definitely second guessed, but did you kind of feel pressured by how ubiquitous this message was from LGBTQ activists that yes, you can be born in the wrong body. Yes, if you present masculine at all, then you must really be the opposite sex or the opposite gender or whatever. Like, do you think that's part of why you just kept going?
And only males lock doors at night too.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of the ridiculousness of it, right?
Right.
Well, Allie, everybody wants to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody does. And when you really, 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 really don't, everybody thinks that they don't. But when you really, really, really don't, and somebody tells you that you can, it's too powerful to take away from a 42-year-old business sales executive. These children have no chance. None. And we're getting near the 7 to 10 year mark. Well, guess what's happening? All these detransitioners that everybody's lifting and pointing, by the way, when they're lifted by conservatives, when they're lifted by evangelicals, when they're lifted by feminists, not feminists, when they're lifted by those people and standing next to them as an evangelical and standing next to them as a detransitioner, the people that need to hear that message, all they hear is, I used to be gay, God cured me. So you're only speaking to the people who already agree with you. And what are you doing when you're lifting with the I'm right, you're wrong? Donations, donations, donations. So we have all this influx of all this donations. Yet my son just signed up for a volleyball competitive class. I'm going to have to tell him no because I'm saving other people's kids, because I refuse to give in, because I'm a mother.
You mentioned some of the complications that you had from the procedures. Obviously, the first one, hysterectomy, they nicked your bladder, which I'm sure was extremely painful. Then you have top surgery. Then you had a phalloplasty.
Well, I had 2 bottom surgeries, actually.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about that?
Which one?
Any and all.
All surgeries?
Well, not. I think you said that you've had 15 surgeries over the past several years, but the
7.
7. Okay, 7 surgeries.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Tell us about okay, so after the hysterectomy, you healed eventually, and then you had top surgery after that?
About 6 weeks later, yes.
6 weeks. Wow,
top
that's
surgery.
not much recovery time.
Yeah, and a full hysterectomy. Now I've had twins, and I had a partial hysterectomy, so I had a full hysterectomy.
Okay.
And top surgery.
But how'd you feel after the top surgery?
Well,
the double mastectomy.
you know, I had always had a little bit of, I wanted it to be real. Do you understand that? Do you get that I wanted to be born in the wrong body? I wanted it because it all made sense. It fixed everything. So I didn't want to get rid of that. But I had doubt. But I was too busy, convincing everybody I was born in the wrong body, and I had doctors doing the same things because at that point, insurances weren't paying for it and we could write a check for it. Right. So I got all this information. I mean, the gynecologist that did my hysterectomy, on my first appointment, I walked in and he goes, have you ever been tested for intersex? Because you have a really strong jawline. And I was like, no. What? And that, instant affirmation.
Yeah.
For me, there are some people, we don't know, it's all experimental, by the way, medical transitions, all experimental, and cross-sex hormones. For me, it took me a couple of weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks before I started to look male. I mean, there's people that are on testosterone for years that still look like butch lesbians. For me, it was like, my body just soaked it up. So there's another affirmation, right?
Yeah.
And then, after the first surgery, what am I going to do then?
Right.
I've lost.
It's like there's no going back.
Where do I go from here?
Yeah.
So.
And then you decided to have the surgery that a lot of people who identify, who call themselves trans men, don't end up having because of the complications of it. And that is the phalloplasty.
Yeah.
And you already mentioned, I think some complications that you've had from that. Is that the arm injury
Yes.
that you have? Okay. Can you tell us about that?
Well, the phalloplasty is experimental. And so we have, and this is the honest to God truth. I know people don't want to know the truth, but here's the truth. We've got all the surgeons that aren't really good. All you have to have is a surgeon plaque, and you can do transgender, top surgery, bottom surgery, every surgery. The phalloplasty is one of the most difficult surgeries that you can have. The level of difficulty is up there. I know this now after research, is up there with like brain surgery. So you want the best surgeons in the world conducting these surgeries. That's not what you're getting. What you're getting are people that did appendix removals, making $250,000 a year, like that, can be millionaires. This is a very, very, very difficult surgery. It is enormously taxing emotionally, physically, spiritually, a 67% complication rate. And we're not talking about complications like, maybe an infection here or there. We're talking loss of genitals. We're talking about colostomy bags. We're talking about failure after failure after failure.
Okay, it's time to tell y'all again about my friends at Jace Medical. As I said yesterday, and as I've been telling you guys a lot, you've got to take advantage of this. You've got to try this. This is such a unique service that Jace Medical offers. It's the only service in the US that provides you the emergency stash of medications that you may need should there be some kind of catastrophe or some kind of reason why you don't have access to the medications that you need. So you can get the antibiotics that you may need in an emergency situation. You can also get a year's supply of the daily prescriptions that you or your kids or your spouse takes. You get a year's supply of these antibiotics, a year's supply of these prescription medications through their telemedicine process. And then you just have that peace of mind that at least in that very important way, you are prepared should there be some kind of chaos or just some kind of shortage. That happens. These prescriptions, because a lot of them are manufactured overseas, you can't always get them when you need them. This just ensures that you have the medications that you need no matter what. Go to jacemedical.com, use code Allie at checkout. That's jacemedical.com, code Allie. So you've had a lot of complications since then.
Oh, do you want to talk about complications? Okay. Yeah.
If you're comfortable.
I get a reoccurring infection. I've started something that's kind of prolonging it, and I'm on infection or I'm on antibiotics probably a couple times a year, 4 or 5, probably every 3 months. It's kind of expanding out with some things that I'm doing. But someday this will kill me. I will get an infection. My body will become numb to the antibiotics, and I'll die from it. So on top of basically having to raise kids and work and make a living and all that kind of stuff, I'm sick a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's really hard. Do you know, have the doctors ever told you this is going to cut X number of years off your life, or you just kind of know through deductive reasoning that one day there will be an infection that will kill you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I did a speech in Tennessee. I was working from home because I had PTSD. I hadn't left my house for 3 years.
Wow.
When I did that interview with What Is a Woman in New York, of all places. Yeah, I haven't left your house for 3 years. Let's go to New York. So I forgot where I was there.
That's okay. We were just you were talking about on What Is a Woman. I remember you saying a similar thing. You were saying, I'm going to die from this infection. And I think you said maybe something along the lines of you may have cut 15 years off your life or something like that.
Medical transition in general, cross-sex hormones cut people's life, not just mine. They cut 10 to 15 years off of everybody's life who starts them. And the earlier you get on them, the more they cut off.
Yeah.
From that perspective. So the complications of medical transition, that's the first thing is cutting your life short. Mine is has to do with the phalloplasty and the infections and the kind of the emotional and stress of just knowing that it's always there.
Yeah.
And failed, and what are you going to do?
You have, over the past few years, I've seen some of the testimonies that you've given, the speeches that you've given, your advocacy. I've seen you say that you don't identify as a detransitioner. You do call yourself a trans man.
For a reason.
But also a lesbian. And you call yourself a mother. So talk to me about that, because maybe to some people that might be confusing.
Oh, yeah, right. I get that. So I'm a biological woman. I'm attracted to females. Woman. Lesbian. I medically transitioned, and I call myself a transgender man to help people understand that medical transition it's a one-way road. You change the core of who you are. I will never be not a trans man, ever. And the whole detrans, what we're doing is we're setting these girls and boys up to think that medical transition is you can just go back, and you can't. See, I get those phone calls from the detransitioners when media, not you in general, when you guys are done with them. I get the calls with the guns in their mouth. Like, what am I going to do? I look like a 17-year-old boy for the rest of my life. I'm surged constantly. I've said that I might want to, medically transition back just to live a life without having to go in the grocery store every, 20 seconds. Like, hey, where are the cherries? Well, it's over there, sir. No, it's ma'am. I medically I mean, who wants to live like that? Yeah. Where's the grace and dignity and love for these children without the activism model? Where is that love? Because, as far as I see, conservatives on this side, liberals on this side, both of y'all are wrong. Nobody is in the middle saying, what about these children? Nobody wants to lose their job or talk about this in their office. Nobody wants to take that investment unless it happens to their kid. So my question is, where's the love from society? Does everybody need to wake up in their own urine and blood and know that they're dying and what that would do to their kids for people to have some kind of heart for these children?
Why do you think that people, either on the left or the right, I'm not really defending either side. Obviously, I'm a conservative, but why do you feel that people don't really care about that suffering? Do you think that, like, conservatives
I think that people care. I think society cares. Society doesn't know the truth. Who I don't think, or I think they're pretty smart to get where they're at. If you're a podcaster or social media or some kind of journalist, to not know. I think what happens is that people get the activism bug. People get the famous bug. People get the, I want to make sure I look good bug. Everybody doesn't want to lose that revenue that comes in. All those politicians, and nobody wants to have those hard questions. It's the reason why I do podcasts with like extremely religious evangelicals. And, that tell me their opinion on homosexuality. And I tell them their opinion, my opinion. And I just go, all right, let's adult better. We agree to disagree on that. I've told you mine, you've told you. Now let's act like adults and let's talk about the medicalization of children. Because the truth, Allie, is that this is not going to go away. There's too much money into it. This is going to go away when conservatives, liberals, evangelicals, gays, lesbians, white, black, when people come together and we grab hands and we circle around and we look up to the media and we say, listen, we are all here. So you can't call us bigots. You can't call us bigots. Now let's talk about the facts. And the facts tell us that no child should medically transition. It's wrong on an epic scale. You have that 10-minute conversation on a neutral floor. Nobody walks away going, yep, it's still for medically transitioning kids. I don't care who you are, what you believe in.
Yeah. And do you regret transitioning as an adult?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if I could go back, I would go back in a second.
Then you wouldn't do it.
Oh, God, no. No, I would have.
But you do believe it should be legal for adults?
To medically transition? Mm-hmm. The same way, it's legal for a woman to get breast surgery, breast augmentation, for Botox, for a man to get hair plugs. It's cosmetic surgery. And so the same precautions that go, because here's another gray area, right? Not being black and white. I offend people this way. There are some people that do medically transition and find a little comfort in it, walk a little bit lighter in life. Not very many. And that's the truth, not very many. But those who it does benefit need to have that available to them. They need to know what it does, what it doesn't do. And anybody that walks into a plastic surgery office and tells the surgeon that, hey, I was born in the wrong body, and if you don't medically transition me or give me hormones, I'm going to kill myself. What they need to be doing is, Sarah, call the paddy wagon. That person needs help. They're a couple of sandwiches short of a picnic basket. Me too. Right. I got help. What's so wrong with saying that? Why are we in a place where everybody just wants to portray that everybody's great? I'm right and you're wrong, and I'm, super successful, got a lot of money, and I'm, sane as who's sane? Mm-hmm. I haven't met one. Have you? Mm-hmm. We're all a little nutty, right? Mm-hmm. So we need to be in a place in society where we have those hard conversations, where we need to say, that sounds fruitier than Fruity Tooty. No. You were not born in the wrong body. You're a man that likes to wear makeup, wears dresses. You do you. Go for it. And as a society, we need to go, that's a man that likes to wear dresses and makeup. He's a little different, but we're going to give him all the dignity and respect that he deserves. But he's not going to go in my kid's locker room. He's not going to play in women's sports. And he's not going to just basically take over society because he likes that. You do you. You know what? You do you. You do that. And as a society, we need to go, you know what? There are people that are all different. All different. And all people deserve dignity and respect. But when you mess with kids, you cross the line.
Let me tell y'all about Crowd Health. So Crowd Health is not health insurance, but they allow you to cover your healthcare expenses. They give you the tools that you need to negotiate and crowdfund your medical bills. So you pay a $50 membership fee to get access to services like telemedicine, bill negotiation, and then you join the crowd, which is a group of members like you who want to help cover each other's healthcare expenses, unexpected medical events. You don't have to worry about doctors' networks. You don't have to worry about the headache of dealing with your insurance company. Any of you who have health insurance, you know how complicated it can be. It can make your health worse because it's so expensive and there are so many different stipulations and carve-outs and all of that you're trying to navigate on your own. Well, Crowd Health is in your corner. You've got a crowd of people who are helping you navigate these events and also helping you cover your bills. So if you want to opt out of the complexities of the health insurance world and you still need that healthcare coverage, go to joincrowdhealth.com. You can use code Allie. It's just $50 a month. It's not health insurance. Go to joincrowdhealth.com, code Allie. Joincrowdhealth.com, code Allie. How do you feel? I've seen you talk about this before, but how people address you. Because one perspective is, of course, well, someone might say, well, I'm just going to call Scott a man, he, him, because that's how Scott looks.
Yeah.
And then there's the other view that I'm more aligned with, that if I just saw you and I didn't know, I would do the same thing. But because I know, and because I think that pronouns are not just a social designation, but something that correlates to a biological reality.
That was a really brilliant sentence, by the way.
Well, thank you.
We pulled that all together. That was good.
I appreciate that. So I wouldn't call you he, him, but I've heard you say that that's not really something that you care about.
I don't. There's so many other things in life to deal with. Here's the truth about pronouns in general. That work's already done. You don't need to redo that. Generations and generations of evolution of hundreds of years have told us, as soon as we see somebody or hear somebody's voice, we say male or female. Mm-hmm. It's already done. Mm-hmm. Asking somebody to go against what they see and hear is narcissistic. It's sociopathic. Every time you have a conversation with somebody, it's like reading It's like writing a novel with your left hand when you're right-handed. You have to catch yourself all the time. He, she, she.
They,
So,
them. Yeah.
so for me, I'm totally okay with people calling me female pronouns because I am. But I do know that they're making a point because nobody in a grocery store is going to come up and go, "Hello, ma'am, how are you?
Right.
Can I carry your bags?"
Right.
So for me, you do what you need to do to make whatever point that you need to make. But I made the choice to medically transition. It's a choice, cosmetic surgery. So I'm not going to tell you what to call me. You call me what makes you feel comfortable, what helps you, what sits in your soul.
Yeah.
And that's called adulting better, right?
Why do you think there is so much conflict and uproar about pronouns? And I'm talking like men, actual men who make very little effort to even look female will get completely outraged.
You know that answer though, don't you? You're not dumb.
I want to hear what you think.
You want to hear from me. Okay. All right. So here's another truth. If you investigate into this pretty far, you'll find that most of the people that are pronoun warriors are going to be trans women. And there is a sexual fetish called autogynephilia. Yeah, I knew you knew it. Can't throw me under the bus with that. Yes. So that is a sexual fetish. And that fetish basically is men who are turned on by the idea of being a woman, by being a sexual object, by being objectified. It's a fetish. So when you see a man with a 6-inch beard, red lipstick, offended by calling them a man, what you're doing is you are you're ruining his erection.
So that's why he's angry.
That's why he's angry. So if we go back here, we're medically transitioning children for money, and we're medically transitioning children so that men don't lose their erections. And that's the truth. That is the absolute truth.
Yeah, there is a large sexualization aspect of it that I think a lot of people don't realize, especially when it comes to these men. And you said it so perfectly that it's not just being turned on by looking like women. It's the sexual object piece. It's the submissiveness piece that they wrongly associate with being female. Pornography plays a large part in it. But gosh, look at these organizations, WPATH, mermaids. There always seems to be like this strange commonality of the sexualization of children within this, which is part of why I think this is so important. There's so many different aspects of this, it seems. The money, the complications of the medical transition, and then there's the sexualization aspect, especially when it comes to children. And there's so many tentacles of it, it's hard to even know what to attack.
It is. And you can't have a conversation about it, right? So to give you an example, on Twitter, I have a speech that I gave. It's got 22 million views on social media. Now, 22 million views on social media. What as a woman came out? It has just under 200 million views when they streamed it, right?
Yeah.
So me, little old me, has 22 million views of that speech. That speech was a speech that I gave. It was an evangelical representative that brought a bill the second year in a row. He got ran through the mud as being a hateful person, actually very nice person. If somebody asked him about his opinion on homosexuality, I think they would be surprised about it. But they attacked him so much. And he ran the first bill the wrong way. And I told him that. And I said, when you run it the second way, call me. When I touch these bills, they get passed. So he called me. He said, we're going to do a press conference. Can you come? And they started just attacking him, a room full of reporters. I pushed him aside and took over. It was 9 minutes, the most powerful speech you will hear on the medicalization of children. Do you know how many mainstream medias have said anything about it?
I can guess.
One, and it was the newscaster that was in the room, and it was making fun of me on Twitter.
Wow. Do you think they know what they're doing?
No.
You don't?
I don't.
Think they think they're virtuous?
I do. I think that's the problem. I think that's the problem.
Do you see people waking up?
People are going to wake up. The carnage of the medicalization of children is going to spill so much carnage. I used to get, suicidal calls maybe once every month when I first started this. I'm getting them weekly.
Really?
I'm finding mental health hospitals for these people weekly. The suicide epidemic is coming. When that carnage spills over enough that mainstream media has to cover it, it's going to stop like that. And here's what's going to happen, Allie. People are going to hate the LGBTQ. The love that we have right now is going to go away. You want to see hate crimes? It's coming. And that's why, and you know what? We deserve it for not stepping up. We deserve it. That's why we need organizations. There's, log cabin organization, Republicans. We got, gays against groomers, all those kind of things. Those are people that need to rise up in our society. I was the first one to doing it 5 years ago. Now we have organizations that are being lifted. These are the people that need to be heard from. If we put these people in front of conservative people and evangelicals, if we adult better, this will stop faster. But if we don't, the carnage will eventually stop this to a point where we will look back on this like we look back on Hitler.
Yeah.
In dinner parties, where we're all sitting there with our glasses of wine going, God, how did that happen? How did people, click, oh, I'm so glad, Hitler's gone or whatever, all that kind of stuff. That would never happen in this society. We are too evolved to let something like that happen. We're not. This is going to be read about the same way in 50 years. How did we butcher an entire generation of children? And we've done it because we haven't adulted better. We need to start.
And tell me about, you're on a speaking tour, a college campus tour. And college campuses, you want to think are places of critical thinking and free speech. But as we've seen over the past several years, that's not always the case. In fact, you'll probably receive the most hostility on these college campuses. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, Riley Gaines, who is on the forefront of, stopping trans women in sports, started an organization, and they reached out to me, and she's the first person that I've said yes to on a speaking tour. And I've done that because she's got a genuine heart, and she's strong enough as a conservative, Christian, very, very right person to sign me as a trans man, as a lesbian, as to adult better. She's the first human being, the first organization, the first place that has basically come to me, and I told him what I wanted, and I listened to her speeches. She's not hateful. She's not right or left. She has that little gray area in her speeches. The reason why people listen to her, and she's adulting better. She's the first person in 5 years that I said, okay. So we have some other women in sports that are going to be speaking. So we're going to be going all over the country, speaking at colleges all over the country. Maybe, I don't even know. It might be worldwide. I don't know. But if you go to my website, scottnewgent.com, book a speech. It's going to get built. It's going to get filled up really, really fast. But it's a conversation we need to have. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for what you do. And where can people, support you, even learn more about your story? There's so many details that you've shared over the years. How can they do that?
Well, I've got a website called scottnewgent.com.
Yeah.
SCOTT Nugent, NEWGENT. On that website, I don't do a stereotypical. I've had so many people, tell me that your website's awful. You need to do this. You need to do that. No, my website is filled with studies. It's filled with links. Somebody says this to you about, the medicalization of children. Click on this link. This is a study you want to send it to. This is the reason why people, it's not a friendly website for traffic, for donations, but it's got a lot of information, and it's opening up a lot of people's minds. So I would go there.
Okay. Great. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Scott. I really appreciate you taking the time, the courage, and your obedience to the call to share these things that you didn't have to do, but you put yourself out there. You've put yourself out there to do it. It's a worthy cause. So thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much.